Have you ever noticed that someone over 65 starts asking people to repeat themselves? Maybe the television gets louder. Maybe conversations in restaurants become frustrating. Maybe they say, "Everyone mumbles these days." It seems harmless, just part of getting older. But what if something much more important is happening? What if struggling to hear is quietly changing the way the brain works? Researchers have found a surprising connection between hearing loss and cognitive decline, including problems with memory and thinking. And one of the most important discoveries is this: hearing loss may not simply affect your ears. It can affect how much effort your brain has to use just to understand the world around you. And after 65, that matters. Because the goal of healthy aging isn't simply to live longer, it's to stay sharp enough to enjoy those years, to remember the names of people you love, to follow a conversation without feeling exhausted, to remain confident, independent, and connected. So today, we're going to look at the surprising link between hearing and memory, and, more importantly, what you can do about it. Because hearing loss is not something you should automatically accept as just aging. Let's start with something most people don't realize. Your brain may be working overtime. Imagine you're sitting at a family dinner. Several people are talking. There is music playing in the background. Plates are moving. Someone is laughing. And you can hear sounds, but you can't clearly make out every word. Your brain doesn't simply give up. It starts filling in the gaps. You watch people's faces. You guess what they said. You concentrate harder. You ask, "What?" Then you try again. To everyone else, it may look like a normal conversation. But inside your brain, the workload can be much greater. This is sometimes described as increased listening effort. And when hearing becomes difficult, your brain may have to devote more attention and mental resources to decoding speech. That leaves fewer resources available for other things, like remembering what was just said. Think about it this way. If your brain has to spend extra energy figuring out the sentence, how much energy is left to store that sentence as a memory? This doesn't mean hearing loss automatically causes dementia. It doesn't. But researchers have found a meaningful association between hearing loss and a higher risk of cognitive decline. And the relationship appears to be especially important in later life. That brings us to the first warning sign. Warning sign 1. You hear people, but can't understand them. This is one of the most overlooked signs of hearing difficulty. You may say, "I can hear perfectly." But then someone speaks while facing away from you, and suddenly the words disappear. Or you're fine in a quiet room, but struggle when several people are talking. You can hear the sound of someone's voice, but the words aren't clear. This distinction matters. Hearing isn't simply about detecting sound. It's about understanding speech, and if you repeatedly struggle to understand conversations, it's worth getting your hearing checked. Not because you're old, because your brain deserves the clearest possible information. Warning sign 2. You're constantly asking people to repeat themselves. Maybe your spouse says something. You answer, "What?" They repeat it. You say, "Okay," but you didn't really hear it the first time. This happens occasionally to everyone. The problem is when it becomes a daily pattern. You may even start avoiding asking people to repeat themselves because you feel embarrassed. So instead, you smile and nod. And that can create another problem. You gradually participate less. You talk less. You avoid noisy restaurants. You stop joining certain gatherings. And this brings us to one of the most important pieces of the hearing-memory connection, the social connection nobody talks about. Human beings are social creatures. Conversations aren't just entertainment. They are mental exercise. When you talk with another person, your brain is processing words, emotions, facial expressions, memories, context, and responses. You're predicting what someone might say next. You're remembering what they said 5 minutes ago. You're connecting today's conversation to something that happened years ago. In other words, a simple conversation can be a surprisingly complex brain workout. But when hearing loss makes conversation difficult, some people gradually withdraw. They stop going out. They avoid phone calls. They become quieter at family gatherings. They may even begin feeling like social situations are exhausting. And over time, less social engagement can mean less cognitive stimulation. So the problem isn't necessarily just the hearing loss itself. It may be the chain reaction that follows. Hearing becomes difficult. Conversation becomes frustrating. You participate less. Your social world becomes smaller, and your brain receives less stimulation. That is one reason experts take hearing loss seriously. But there's another possibility. Your brain can start missing information memory. Begins with attention. If you don't properly notice something, your brain may never store it clearly. Think about meeting someone new. They say, "Hi, I'm Robert," but you only hear, "Hi, I'm," you smile. Later, you can't remember the person's name. You might blame your memory, but perhaps the information never entered your memory properly in the first place. This is an important distinction. Sometimes what feels like bad memory is actually an attention or hearing problem. And that means the solution may not be trying harder to remember. It may be making the information easier to hear in the first place. The third warning sign. The television keeps getting louder. This one is easy to ignore. You turn up the television, then a few months later you turn it up again. Family members complain that it's too loud. You think they're exaggerating. But if you regularly need higher volume than the people around you, that's a reason to consider a hearing evaluation. Don't wait until communication becomes impossible. Hearing loss often develops gradually. There may be no dramatic moment when you suddenly realize you've lost your hearing. Instead, you adapt. You sit closer to the television. You choose quieter restaurants. You watch people's lips. You avoid conversations from another room. You ask family members to speak louder. Your life slowly rearranges itself around the hearing difficulty. And because the changes happen gradually, they can become your new normal. But normal doesn't necessarily mean healthy. What happens if you ignore it? This is where the story becomes especially interesting. Some researchers believe the connection between hearing loss and cognitive decline may involve several pathways. One is the increased mental effort required to understand speech. Another is reduced social interaction. There may also be changes in how the brain processes sound and allocates attention. And hearing loss often occurs alongside other age-related health conditions that can also affect brain health. So there may not be one single explanation. It may be several factors working together. And that's exactly why you shouldn't think of hearing care as simply an ear problem. It can be part of protecting your overall quality of life. Now here's the good news. There are practical steps you can take. Step 1. Get your hearing tested. This may sound obvious, but many adults wait years before getting a proper hearing evaluation. Don't. A hearing test is simple, and it can tell you whether your hearing has changed and which frequencies are affected. If you already notice difficulty understanding speech, especially in noisy environments, bring it up with a healthcare professional or hearing specialist. And don't think you need to wait until you're deaf. You don't. Early attention is better than waiting for the problem to become severe. Step 2. Don't treat hearing aids like a sign of aging. This is one of the biggest mental barriers. Some people think hearing aids are for very old people, but hearing technology isn't a symbol of failure. It's a tool. If glasses help your eyes receive clearer information, hearing devices can help your brain receive clearer sound. And research has started giving us encouraging evidence here. A major clinical trial known as Achieve found that a hearing intervention slowed the rate of cognitive decline over 3 years among older adults who were at higher risk of cognitive decline. The result doesn't mean hearing aids prevent dementia for everyone. It doesn't. But it adds an important piece to the puzzle. Taking hearing seriously may be part of a broader strategy for protecting healthy brain aging. And that's a powerful reason not to ignore hearing problems. Step 3. Protect the hearing you still have. Here's something you can start doing today. Pay attention to loud sounds. Concerts, power tools, loud machinery, extremely loud headphones, even repeated exposure to high-volume environments can damage the delicate structures involved in hearing. If you work around loud noise, use appropriate hearing protection. And remember, protecting your hearing isn't only about preserving your ability to hear music. It's about preserving communication, connection, independence, and potentially reducing one important risk factor associated with cognitive decline. Step 4. Make conversations easier. If you have hearing difficulty, don't force your brain to work harder than necessary. Ask people to face you when they speak. Move to a quieter area. Reduce background television noise. Use good lighting so you can see facial expressions. If you're having a conversation with several people, sit where you can see everyone. These simple changes can dramatically reduce the effort required to follow a conversation. And there's nothing embarrassing about making communication easier. You're not being difficult. You're helping your brain process information. Step 5. Keep your brain and body active. This is where hearing becomes part of a much bigger longevity strategy. You shouldn't think, "I got my hearing checked, so my brain is protected. Healthy brain aging doesn't work that way. Your brain responds to your entire lifestyle. Regular physical activity supports cardiovascular health and brain function. Strength training helps preserve muscle and independence. A nutritious diet supports overall health. Good sleep matters. Managing blood pressure, diabetes, and other cardiovascular risk factors matters. And staying socially connected matters. Think of brain health like a team. Hearing is one player, movement is another, sleep is another, nutrition is another, social connection is another. You don't need perfection from any single one. You want all of them working together. Here's a simple test you can try. The next time you're at a family gathering, pay attention. Can you follow a conversation when there's background noise? Can you understand someone when they turn away? Do you frequently ask people to repeat themselves? Do you rely heavily on watching people's lips? Do you avoid restaurants because conversations are too difficult? Do you feel unusually tired after social conversations because you've been concentrating so hard? If several of these sound familiar, don't automatically blame your memory. Your hearing may deserve attention. And here's another important point. If you're already experiencing noticeable memory problems, don't assume hearing loss explains everything. Memory changes can have many causes. Some are treatable, some require medical attention. If memory problems are interfering with daily life, talk with your healthcare professional rather than trying to diagnose yourself. The most powerful lesson. There's something fascinating about aging. We often focus on the obvious things: blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, exercise, weight. But sometimes the less obvious systems deserve attention too. Hearing is one of them. Because your ears are not simply helping you hear sounds, they're helping your brain interact with the world. Every conversation, every story from a grandchild, every phone call from a friend, every laugh around the dinner table, every piece of information you need to understand and remember. When hearing becomes difficult, the world can become quieter. And when the world becomes harder to engage with, some people gradually pull away from it. That is why hearing care can be much more than hearing care. It can be about staying connected, staying mentally engaged, and staying independent. So if you're over 65, and you've noticed that conversations are becoming harder to follow, don't simply say, "That's just part of getting older." Maybe it is common. But common doesn't mean you have to ignore it. Get your hearing checked. Protect your ears from excessive noise. Make conversations easier. Stay physically active. Keep your social world alive. And continue taking care of the other foundations of brain health. Because healthy aging isn't about preventing every change. It's about noticing the changes that matter and responding before they quietly take away parts of the life you enjoy. Your hearing may seem like a small thing, but sometimes protecting something small can help protect something much bigger. Your connection to the people you love, your confidence, your independence, and your ability to stay fully engaged with life. If this video changed the way you think about hearing and memory, share it with someone over 65 who might be ignoring their hearing. And subscribe to Healthy Years for more practical, science-informed strategies to help you stay sharp, strong, independent, and energetic as you age. Because getting older is inevitable, but growing older well is something you can actively work toward.